There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim. This was sent to me by a fan of the show, and I'm going to read it in just a little bit. Why the name Toltec? This is the way the managed agenda is essentially managed, and I'll get into that and so much more today. It's a loaded show, so you're going to want to stick here. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. Central banks are increasing their gold reserves due to increasing global financial crisis concerns. Billionaires like Ray Dalio to giant fund management companies like Goldman Sachs are turning to physical assets like gold. That's not surprising. Historically, gold's biggest rally happened after the largest recessions in history. In fact, after the 2000-2009 recession, gold prices jumped 50.5%. Think about what that means. Wealth of entire countries are being protected by gold. Wealth of billionaires are being protected by gold. Many people are using gold to keep their billions safe. And Noble Gold Investments can help you protect your own wealth too with gold. It will take you no more than 5 minutes to set up an account. Noble Gold specializes in storing the value of your wealth through gold IRAs, so they're the natural choice. And they're giving away a beautiful 1/10 of an ounce gold American Eagle coin with every qualifying IRA or 401k this month. Folks, do something different. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call the team now at 877-646-5347. Once again, that's 877-646-5347. Or to find out more, please visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Folks, if you're here for the first time, please hit the subscribe button below there. Also, our free UFO film, if you open up the text box right below and scroll down a little bit, it will say free UFO film, episode 1, episode 2, number 3. The trailer came out yesterday right here on YouTube. We will be doing a pre-sale, but I digress. But check all that out, and thanks for watching. Why the name Toltec? This is the way the narrative is managed, okay? And I want to thank the gentleman who sent this to me. A common belief in the 1800s was that the local Indians were not civilized enough to build the mounds. The builders of the mounds were mistakenly thought to be people from Mexico, such as the Toltecs, and this site was given the name Toltec. Investigation in the 1890s revealed that the mounds were not built by the Toltecs, but by the highly organized ancestors of the local Indians. Archaeologists have named these ancestors the Plume Bayou culture. And of course, this is what it looks like with all the mounds. Is that true? Is that true, or is that a construct? Is that a narrative that they're just making up? Because when you ask Native Americans, First Nation people, who built the mounds, they will tell you, many of them will tell you, we did not do it. We did not build the mounds. They were here when we got here. But all of this got turned around at the beginning of the 20th century. And I want to just continue. This is Fort Ancient. We're looking at 3.5 miles of continuous earthen walls that you see there. It's an astounding sight. And when I got there, I looked at Fritz. Fritz took us there, and I really have to go back. I looked at Fritz and I went, oh my gosh. This is Nephilim Central. This is unbelievable. So it's 3.5 miles of continuous earthen walls. Some of these walls go up 20 feet. Here's the deal. How is it that they haven't eroded over the thousands of years since they've been constructed? How is that? How is the dirt compacted so that they don't lose their shape? And who, pray tell, built these? Let's continue. Here's a shot of one of the gates. We were in one of those gates on the vernal equinox, the spring equinox. Peggy, my wifey, had her cell phone looking at the constellation directly over the gate, right? Directly over the gate, the serpent, Hydra. That's not a coincidence. Here's another shot. The Great Gateway between Old Fort and the Middle Fort. Now, they call these things forts. They call it Fort Ancient. But are they really forts? Or is it something else? Is it as Docent Jack tells us, are these really a prehistoric church? Or was it something even more sinister? Was human sacrifice practiced at the site? Why are there 66 gates? Moving right along. So right there are people standing. I know exactly where this is, by the way. People standing, and one of the persons pointing up like this to the mound. Now, the trees were never supposed to be there when this site was used and was functioning. They weren't there. These all came in much, much later. And in my opinion, if they want to remain true to the site, what they need to do is cut all the stinking trees down, because that would give the viewer a real sense of what the site looked like in antiquity. So you can see the mounds, how large they are. Some of these things go up 20, 30 feet. Continuing, and I'm going to give a little copyright disclaimer because I took this from another YouTube channel. If they want to do a copyright thing, that's fine. But I'm claiming fair use because it's going to illustrate my point. This is Docent Jack at Fort Ancient lecturing. Let's see what he has to say, and I will stop it from time to time.
So now, Fort Ancient, it's a 2,000-year-old prehistoric earthwork site. We're on the short list for World Heritage recognition right now, which means that we are going to be considered for a global destination for world travelers. But Fort Ancient itself is the largest and best preserved hilltop enclosure in the United States, 245 feet above the river, and we are enclosed by over 18,000 feet of earth walls. To give you an understanding, 1, 2, 3 earth walls, those are the 3 earth walls right there. So we're at the very tip of the iceberg.
In our film, Mysterious Mound Builders, we actually show this. I flew the drone up into exactly the place where he's talking about. You can see that by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net. But I digress.
So Fort Ancient, again, hilltop enclosure, 18,000 feet of earth walls, built 2,000 years ago by people that we call the Hopewell cultural people.
Okay, stop right there. They call them the Hopewell. Hopewell's a farmer. I've talked about this before, but there's a lot of new people that's coming. And why do I get so, what's the word I'm looking for? Not uptight, that's from the 60s, but I get concerned, I get bothered because I feel like there's a narrative here that's been just twisted to fit a certain paradigm. And they really don't go where the evidence leads, as we know, with our DNA, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. So he's talking about the Hopewell people. Hopewell's a farmer, for crying out loud. And so this is why the whole construct begins to collapse. If they are intellectually honest, they have no idea who these people were. Were they Native Americans? You tell me. Let's continue.
They would have used nothing more than the shoulder bones of deer and elk, split up antler, clamshell, hose, digging sticks, placing the soil in the...
Okay, so here we go. Placing the soil in the baskets, the digging sticks, antlers, clamshell hose. We actually showed this in the film, Mysterious Mound Builders. Rick Woodward was instrumental in this down in Louisiana. We hired a fit laborer. We made a replica of a stone hoe, and the tool worked really well. But there's no shovels, and the guy's going like this in the dirt, and he's gathering up the dirt. We're putting it into a bucket. We didn't use a birch bark basket, but we used a bucket. And he takes the bucket and he walks over to where the mound would be, let's say a couple of 100 yards away, and he dumps the bucket. And when I show this, at conferences, people just howl with laughter because we're looking at something like, millions and millions of buckets of earth to create this. Millions of buckets. So we're looking at something else. Some other culture was here. Now let's know what he says.
Baskets that we've demonstrated would have held no more than about 35 to 40 pounds of soil. Well, how do we know that? Well, we've taken a trench through an earth wall right at State Route 350 and found actual basket loading of soil.
Time out. Where was that basket found? If it's found up near the top, these mounds were used by Native Americans as secondary funeral internment areas. They would bury their dead on the mounds. We know that. So we don't know where this basket full of earth really came from. That's conjecture. That's conjecture. Because, okay, so you found a couple of baskets full of soil. Where were they located? If they're up near the surface, then your construct falls apart. I get that. Let's continue.
So to figure out volume, you take your tape measure, measure the length of the stain, the depth of the stain, give those measurements to somebody who got better than straight C's in high school general math. That was me, yeah. And it gives you volume. There's an estimated 553,000 cubic yards of soil at this site.
You hear that number? Hear that number. So what does that mean? This is the punchline.
What does it mean to you guys? Absolutely nothing.
It's strategic.
Well, and again, we are not a fort. We are a prehistoric church. The 553,000 cubic yards of soil. If we were to tear apart all of the earth walls, all 18,000 feet, and put them into dump trucks, each dump truck holding between 15 and 20 tons of soil, and park it at the Jeremiah Morrow Bridge on Interstate 71, which is about 1.5 miles away from here. Start parking the dump trucks end for end. You will end up 15 miles from downtown Cleveland, 200 miles away.
Okay, so we have 200 miles of dump trucks end to end. And we're really supposed to believe this nonsense? We're really supposed to believe? Do you know what that translates in single buckets of earth? Are you kidding me? Where's the workforce to do this? And this is just one of the sites. There are 10,000 mounds alone in Ohio. We're looking at a hidden history, folks, that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. So moving on, then we get the Bowstone. So the Bowstone is found in America's Stonehenge. I've talked about this numerous times. It sits in it's found, it's unearthed, it's discovered in a collapsed chamber at America's Stonehenge. The site is located near Salem, New Hampshire, and they find this thing and they realize that looks like writing. And they put it in the museum and it sits there for 11 years. Enter Dr. Barry Fell, who comes in and looks at this and goes, that looks like Iberian Punic. He translated it and says, Tubal of the Canaanites in dedication. What is that doing in New Hampshire? Pray tell. You tell me. Once again, we find evidence of something else going on. America's Stonehenge, in my estimation, in my opinion, just like Fort Ancient in Ohio, and many of these other mound sites that we visited and create films on, it's Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. Mainstream archaeology will never, but never go there. Instead, they'll dismiss this as, oh, that's a forgery. So no matter how much evidence we get, it doesn't matter. They'll never come across the line because it's a religion. It's sacrosanct. And anything that goes against that particular paradigm is dealt with. So here's evidence. I'm not making this stuff up. And when I showed, Docent Jack just a few minutes ago, talking about 200 miles of dump trucks, time out, Jack, time out. How did they do that? I mean, do you realize 200 miles of dump trucks end to end? That's how much dirt is in Fort Ancient. Tubal of the Canaanites in dedication. What the heck is that doing there? Then we've got this, which I discovered. This is the photograph out in Catalina. So how much evidence do we need before people start to wake up and go, we're not being told the truth? And in my opinion, we're not being told the truth. There's Ralph Glidden, who was 5'8". In front of him is a large skeleton, just about 9 feet tall. That rewrites history as we know it. What's it doing out there in Catalina? What happened to that skeleton? And why, pray tell, did the museum redact the picture taking the giant out of the skeleton? Then we've got this in South America. Episode 6 of On the Trail of the Nephilim, our extensive research on the DNA of the elongated Paracas skulls. We're told, oh, this is all cradle headboarded. All of it. No, it's not. And this is why. Look at the zygomatic arch, that bone right underneath the eye. See how pronounced that is? Look how elongated the skull is. Look at the robust jaw. Look at the fact that the eye sockets are 25 to 30% larger than a human being. And then here's the smoking gun. Once again, hats off to our anthropologist on our team, Rick Woodward. There's the foramen magnum. That should be a lot closer to the middle of the skull, not all the way to the occipital plate or the rear plate. And then the DNA that we took of many of these skulls showed a Middle Eastern Eastern European haplogroup, Baltic area, Black Sea area. What's that doing in Peru? It shouldn't be there, and yet it is. And how many times do we have to do this before someone will actually sit up and take notice and go, wait a minute, something's not jibing here. I believe, and I've talked about this before, that these may be, conjecture on my part, that these may be, this was last week's show, this might be, these skulls, these so-called Paracas people may be the remnant of the Horites that lived in caves. Why? Because there's similarities. As we talked about Tel Gezer last week, that they lived underground and there was a trap door. We found exactly that over in Paracas. Coincidence? Oh, well, other cultures mimic, without any cross-pollination. People do things. Really? On the shores of Paracas, some of the most beautiful coastline in the world, and 3,000 years ago it was a green belt. It wasn't a wasteland like it is today. What are we looking at? Why is it that the DNA points to Middle Eastern, European, and yet academia will not acknowledge it? Anyway, folks, you get my drift. And just to sum things up, there is an agenda here. There is an agenda. And when you look at, let's just walk through it. When you look at 200 miles of dump trucks end to end with digging, clamshell hose, and there's another video with Docent Jack showing this reporter what a clamshell looks like. I mean, you're like this and it's broken. It's a joke. So you're digging sticks. Yeah. Good luck with a digging stick. Ever try that? And if you're busting sod, it's really hard. You need a stone hoe. So where are they? How many stone hoes did they find at Fort Ancient? Maybe 100? Doesn't work. Doesn't make any sense. We're looking at a hidden history here. Anyway, folks, I'll be talking about this in depth at Dark Secrets and Bright Hopes Conference coming up, not this weekend, but the weekend following. I hope to see you there. It's up in Yuba City. There is streaming. Here it is, L.A. Marzulli, Derek Gilbert, Dr. Brian Artis, and of course, Pastor Dave Bryan. I'll be speaking 3 times also on Sunday night to a much smaller group. I hope to see you there. Tickets are available. Live streaming is available. Check it out, please. Thank you so much. Go to LA, On the Trail with LA, onthetrailwithla.com, onthetrailwithla.com. All 7 of them are there. Folks, what can I tell you? It's time to stand up and say, wait a minute, we're not buying the official narrative. This is not science, this is guesswork. So don't call it science. Some parts are scientific. When they take a certain culture and they take all the artifacts and they list them and all, that's science, I get that. But there's a narrative here, and that narrative is a forced narrative. That narrative is not based on science, in my opinion. So, On the Trail of the Nephilim, On the Trail with LA, onthetrailwithla.com. You can download all of them, right? And you can educate yourself because something else is going on. Don't forget UFO disclosure number 1 and number 2. It's free. Open up a text box right below. Our 3rd film, I released the trailer yesterday. That will be available probably by the end of the month. I'm still messing around with some of the editing here, but it should be hopefully by the afternoon. We'll get all the video, all the audio, sound effects over to Doug Diamond, and he does all of our mixing. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for watching On the Trail of the Nephilim with your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Remember, there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. Thanks so much for watching.